Anthony Sowell's home is being called the House of Horrors. This house is the scene of horrific crimes.
Some wrapped in blankets, some buried in the basement.
In the heart of Cleveland's Mount Pleasant neighborhood, nestled between boarded windows and forgotten alleys, a nightmare unfolded in silence. From 2007 to 2009, one man lured women to his home and they never walked out. What lay hidden inside 12205 Imperial Avenue would horrify the nation and expose years of unchecked evil. This is the story of Anthony Sowell, the Cleveland Strangler. Anthony Edward Sowell was born and raised in East Cleveland, Ohio, one of 7 children born to single parent Claudia Gertrude Garrison. 7 other children belonging to Sowell's sister also lived in the household, having moved in after her death following a chronic illness. Sowell had an extremely abusive and traumatic upbringing due largely to Garrison. According to Sowell's niece, Leona Davis, Garrison subjected them to physical abuse while her own children watched from adjacent rooms.
Home life on Page Avenue as a child. You obviously know Ramona and Leona, correct?
Correct.
You saw their testimony
Yes.
over the last week or so. Did you know about those beatings that they suffered?
Of course.
Did you witness those beatings?
Yes.
Were you ever whooped or beaten yourself?
Of course.
Can you explain that to me?
I was whooped and beat.
Right. Well, were you beaten with a switch ever?
Switch, ironing cord. I was hit with a cane, broom,
And who are the people that would whip you like this?
both my grandmother and my mother.
Do you remember an incident when you were growing up on Page when you were upstairs in bed asleep?
Yes.
What happened in this incident?
My mother came up and started whooping me while I was asleep.
What was she using to whip you?
I think it was extension cord that time.
In 1989, a woman named Melvette Sockwell, who was 3 months pregnant, attempted to leave Sowell's home. He bound her hands and feet with a tie and belt, then gagged her with a rag. She told police, "He choked me real hard because my body started tingling. I thought I was going to die." In 1990, he was charged with kidnapping, rape, and attempted rape. He pled guilty to attempted rape and served 15 years in prison. He was released in 2005.
Took me to the hospital. Yeah, they did the little routine rape kit. They didn't give me anything to put on but the hospital gown. I had nobody to call to bring me clothes because at this point, I just want out of here. So I'm walking down East Cleveland with a hospital gown with my whole derriere hanging out. Because just only hours ago, I'm hogtied, wondering if I'm gonna live or die. They knew what the man did to me. They knew. And I was left to fend for myself.
In September 2009, Sowell invited LaTundra Billups to his home to smoke crack. On September 22nd, she told police that after a few drinks, he became angry and hit, choked, and raped her as she passed out. Sowell eventually let her leave his home. She was the first victim to file a police report with the Cleveland Police Department, but her claims went unanswered for weeks.
Bombeck showed the jury hospital photos of what he said described where an electrical cord was allegedly used to strangle one victim who escaped.
You can see the marks around her neck. She went to the hospital the day after, September 23rd of 2009. Clear marks around her neck. Very visible marks around her neck to support her allegations that Mr. Sowell wrapped an extension cord around her neck and squeezed as hard as he could.
On October 20th, 2009, Sean Morris stated that she went to Sowell's house to drink and do drugs. She left the house but needed to return to retrieve an ID when he attacked her. During her attack, she said she was able to get to a window on Sowell's second floor and started to climb out. According to her testimony, Sowell tried to grab her and then shoved her out the window before she lost consciousness.
She fell out the window upstairs on the second floor.
Okay, are you there?
She lay on the ground, butt neck. She ran about 40.
About 40? All right.
Yeah.
Is she conscious?
She can't get up, though.
But she is awake, right?
Look, I ain't even trying to go near her. I did with my T-shirt put on.
Is she awake?
She kind of awake and going in and out.
Breathing?
Yeah.
And which window did she fall out? The first or the second?
Oh, no.
Was it less than 6 feet or more than 6 feet?
The second, yeah, 12, 15
All right.
feet.
All right. There we go. And it happened just now.
He reminded the jury of another victim who leaped to safety after Sowell allegedly tried to attack her.
With all his force, pushed her off the window ledge, causing her to fall to this area.
The jury is expected to get the case and go into deliberations this afternoon. At the Justice Center, I'm Chief Investigator Ron Regan.
A riveting video was featured at the Anthony Sowell murder trial today. A woman, whom we are not identifying, said she was raped by Sowell and tumbled naked from a third-floor window of his house as she tried to escape. This is surveillance video shown in court today from a camera at the Ray's Sausage Company right next door. We have covered pictures of the woman on the ground and the naked man whom prosecutors said was Anthony Sowell.
Viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
In the Anthony Sowell trial have heard graphic testimony, and today they saw some very graphic crime scene photos. News Channel 5 Chief Investigator Ron Regan is once again following developments from court. And Ron, these jurors sure cannot have a weak stomach, and look at some of the evidence that has been presented to them.
Oh, Lee, I'll tell you, it was very, very hard for me to look at those photos, and you know that it had to have been hard for those jurors. WEWS TV is not going to show you those most disturbing photos, but here's a look at what the inside of Anthony Sowell's home looked like the night police arrived. You're looking at the front living room on the third floor of Sowell's Imperial Avenue home. It was here where the first of 11 victims were found. But here's how it looked on October 29th, 2009. These are crime scene photos that jurors saw for the first time, including this crawl space filled with dirt, covering one of the victims underneath. 4 victims were found in this room alone, near a black garbage bag filled with trash and crawling with flies and maggots. The next day, October 30th, investigators moved here to the basement. A 5th victim was found wrapped in a black garbage bag covered with dirt. Then, the most grisly discovery, the head of one victim inside a bucket. In the following days, the search moved here to Sowell's backyard and the area just below these steps. Crime scene photos show another shallow grave. By Tuesday, November 3rd, the remainder of the backyard was searched. Crime scene photos revealed the discovery of 4 more shallow graves, all less than 24 inches below the surface. And jurors also saw what Sowell allegedly saved, including women's clothing, jewelry they may have worn, and this, a bank statement showing that Sowell had just $3.14 in the bank just days before he was arrested. And police also found the personal Social Security Administration card information of one victim, as well as her food stamp card. Coming up tonight at 6 o'clock, how police finally captured Anthony Sowell and what he allegedly told them. Live at the Justice Center, I'm Chief Investigator Ron Regan.
Riveting video is a key piece of evidence against the accused serial killer.
Hey,
News
how are
Channel
you?
5's Paul Kiska is outside the courtroom for us tonight. And Paul, Sowell appeared to be pretty defensive in those tapes.
Defensive and evasive, but he did tell police that he heard voices.
Anthony, you're a smoker? Yes. You want some coffee and a cigarette?
At first, Cleveland police call him Anthony, then Tony, give him cigarettes and coffee. Sowell starts to open up, tells police a girlfriend broke up with him, broke his heart a couple years earlier, and that's when the rage and voices started.
I spent the whole weekend just crying.
At that point, you feel when you weren't able to control your hate or your anger or whatever.
That's when I just started hearing things, yeah. I mean, it was just, I just like had a breakdown or something.
Police tell Sowell their questions are about to get a lot more serious.
And probably the next block of time, 15, 20 minutes, might be the most important 15 minutes of your life.
Detectives ask Sowell about bodies found in the house on the 3rd floor.
Upstairs on the 3rd floor we stay. We found some folks up there.
Then the most riveting part of questioning. Sowell said the voices got worse. Bad things would happen. Police wanted to know how often.
But with these other people, you got the voices.
Yeah.
And what did the voices say? Can you remember?
It's bad. That's all I can.
There's bad voices?
It's bad people.
Is it one voice or is it more than one?
Just one voice.
And it's...
I don't know if I'm dreaming. I don't know.
How many times?
I don't know.
Can you guess?
No.
If you had to throw a number out there, what would you say? Like 10? 20?
No.
Not that many. 15?
No.
So between 10 and 15?
Yes.
Maybe? To the best that you can think.
10.
So we'll
10,
say
20, 15, yeah.
10 and 15.
Now, Sowell told detectives from the Cleveland Police Department that the voice he heard he thought was a ghost, but he never admitted to hurting anyone. Now, coming up at 6 o'clock tonight on News Channel 5, you'll hear Sowell talk about how he only hurt women in his dreams. And you hear what police had to say about that during the interrogation. Reporting live downtown from the Justice Center, Paul Kiska, News Channel 5.
All right, Paul.
Crystal Dozier was 38 years old when she vanished in May of 2007. A mother of 7, she struggled with addiction, but was trying to get clean. Her family reported her missing, but there was no urgency. She had been to Sowell's house before. This time, she never left. Her remains wouldn't be discovered until years later, buried in his backyard, beneath broken earth and cracked concrete.
And why is that important? Why is that important? Because the first victim in this case, Crystal Dozier, went missing sometime in the summer of 2007. And if I remember the testimony of Lori Frazier correct, she testified that she knew Crystal Dozier. They went to school together. And what happens here? Lori moves out, and one of her best friends disappears. What did we learn about Crystal Dozier? You heard from her mother, Florence Gray, and 2 of her children, Antonio Dozier and Anthony Dozier. Florence Gray, the mother, testified that she last spoke to her daughter on May 17th of 2007. It was on the phone. Christo, at the time, was living in a street in this Mount Pleasant area with a guy by the name of Louis Murphy. We learned that Christo was a mother of 7, that she became addicted to drugs at a young age. After she disappeared sometime in May of 2007, the family would put flyers all over the neighborhood. But these, as soon as they would put them up, they pretty much disappear. And they looked for her for the better part of 2.5 years. That Christo's stomping ground as far as drug activity was somewhere in the neighborhood of East 116th Street. Her daughter, Antonia, testified that the last time she saw her mother in person was Mother's Day of 2007. You heard from her son, Anthony. Anthony was coming home on furlough from the Marines in April of 2007. Saw her around back then, but when he got out in June, you know, there's no Christo. File police reports, whatever. He would look and scour the streets for over the next 2 years in search of his mother, to no avail. But Christo Dozier disappeared sometime in the summer of 2007.
So I looked at her, and she looked so sad and pitiful, like she just had a rough time or something. So I said, a beer? I said, how you gonna get a beer? I said, it's closed. Oh, they'll open up or something like that. So I said, I tell you what, come on with me, and you can get all the beers you want.
Tashana Culver, 31, was a mother who had faced challenges with addiction and periods of instability. In June 2008, she vanished without a trace. Her family, accustomed to her intermittent absences, did not immediately report her missing. It wasn't until the discovery of multiple bodies at Sowell's residence in 2009 that her remains were identified among the victims.
Which leads us to another woman by the name of Tashana Culver. This young lady was about 30 years old. You heard from members of her family. You heard from a Yvonne Williams McNeil, the mother of Tashana, and you heard from her sister LaTanya. And what did we learn from them? That for a significant period of time, they had a house on Imperial. Basically, if you know where the beverage store is, if you just keep going east, about 5 houses on the same side of the street would be a house that at one time or another was occupied by LaTanya Irby, sister to Tashana Culver, and by Tashana Culver herself. Miss Williams McNeil last saw Tashana at the Imperial House. She said sometime in March of 2008. 2008. Likewise, Tashana had a problem with drugs. There was no secret to anybody. She had a boyfriend by the name of Carl Johnson that I don't think family members were too thrilled about, but he lived in Akron and lived with them for a while, came back, lived on Imperial, then decided to perhaps move back with them. This kind of irked her sister, LaTanya Irby, to some extent. So, in fact, she got into it with her sister, Tashana, and sometime around March of 2008, it was LaTanya's impression that her sister was going to move back to Akron with this guy by the name of Carl Johnson. But we know that that's not, she never made it there. Again, a problem with crack cocaine. So this young lady, again, ladies and gentlemen, disappeared sometime in the spring of 2008. Never to be heard from again.
Every female that you have brought to the house, have each and every one of them used drugs or used the drugs like crack or whatever? Is that one of the reasons why they come to your house? So they can smoke? Okay. And you telling me that you don't do that? I used to, but you don't do that.
Sometimes.
LaShonda Long, 25, was the youngest of Sowell's known victims. A mother of 3, she had a spirited personality, but struggled with personal demons. In August 2008, she disappeared. Only her skull was recovered, found wrapped in a paper bag inside a bucket in Sowell's basement, leaving her family with haunting questions.
All right. Which takes us to another young lady by the name of LaShonda Long, who also disappeared sometime in the summer of 2008. We heard from Mr. Jim Allen, the father of LaShonda Long. LaShonda was perhaps maybe the youngest of all the victims, 24 or 25 years of age when she went missing. Again, no denying that LaShonda had problems with drugs, battling drug addiction. She was a mother of 3 children. Mr. Allen testified that daughter was living in the area of 123rd and Kinsman. She was petite, said under 5 feet. Even her mom, even to that day, had problems with drug addiction and would be a person of the streets. But the important thing about this is that the last time Mr. Allen had any contact with his daughter LaShonda was end of April, going into May of 2008. And she would disappear. So sometime in the late spring or early summer of 2008 was the last time anybody heard or saw LaShonda Long.
I know what. One thing I think always made me mad is they had kids.
And they was out in the street.
Yeah. That's a big thing in my head.
Michelle Mason, 45, had faced hardships, including addiction and health issues, but was striving for a better life. She was last seen in October 2008. Her family reported her missing, but the investigation yielded no leads until her remains were found at Sowell's residence in 2009, confirming their worst fears.
Still in 2008, ladies and gentlemen, and we're hitting into the fall of 2008, and the next person we've got to talk about is a lady by the name of Michelle Mason. To learn a little bit about Michelle Mason, we heard from her mother, Adeline Atterbury, and her sister, Mary Mason. According to them, Michelle had a drug problem that went back many years, but she was battling it, and she seemed to have been winning that battle up until the time she met her death. She at one time moved to New York. When she moved to New York, that's when she acquired a drug problem, came back in the Cleveland area. One time in her life was involved in an incident where she got shot and she lost her, I believe, her left eye, and she had to get a prosthetic eye to replace it. In October of 2008, she was living in the area of 121st and Buckeye, right in the Mount Pleasant area, ladies and gentlemen. She disappeared sometime in 2008. She disappeared. They would go and put flyers up in all the stores, but to no avail. To no avail. In fact, most of the flyers would come down. I remember the mother, Adeline Atterbury, testifying that she actually went one time to the corner store. That would be the Imperial beverage store, where she learned from the owner, and she testified that Sowell took down signs in the store when he was purchasing trash bags, But went missing in October of 2008, not to be heard or seen again.
The fourth witness was the owner of a community store across the street from the sausage factory and just about a half a block from Sowell's home. That community grocery store was owned by a man who at the time remembers Sowell coming into the store and buying 4 to 5 boxes of heavy-duty garbage bags, and then he remembers describing the smell of what he thought was decaying bodies.
The smell is unbelievable. Unbelievable. I mean, I used to smell it before. Then what I did, I bought 4,700 so I can shut the door. I bought a brand new door so I can keep the smell away. And I used to have the air conditioner running 24 hours. So the smell, and not the smell, no. And it used to come from the vent of my store. Of the smell is unbelievable.
Did you like him though? Did you like him when you met him?
Yes.
Okay. So you weren't mad at him when you met him. You kind of liked him all, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Tonya Carmichael, 53, was a devoted mother and grandmother, known for her warm spirit. She disappeared on November 10th, 2008. Her mother reported her missing, but the case received little attention. It wasn't until the discovery of multiple bodies at Sowell's residence in 2009 that her remains were identified, buried in his backyard.
What we're talking about is Tonya Carmichael. The time she went missing, she was roughly 51 years of age and a mother of 3. You heard her mother, Barbara Carmichael, come into court and testify, give us a little information about her. According to Barbara Carmichael, Tonya started using drugs kind of later in her life, when she was about 42 years of age. Hung out in the area of 116th and Kinsman. She said that the last time she saw her daughter was November 10th of 2008. She was driving her boyfriend's truck. She came over to Barbara's house to get money for antifreeze. It was around 4:30 p.m. Maybe a week or so later, they would find this very truck parked in the area of 118th and Kinsman. They too would put up flyers, but Miss Carmichael, after November 10th of 2008, would not be seen or heard from again.
Well, they would like piss you off or something, maybe, or what? What do you think would cause you to choke them? I mean, just off the top of your head. Think about it. Punishment?
My girl and them, something. That's all I can say.
That was punishing them because of
I was the punisher. Like,
was the punisher.
I can't explain.
Kim was loved by her father, Don Smith, who would later testify that his daughter had struggled deeply with addiction. Despite her challenges, she sought stability and connection, gleaning on her family's prayers and support.
Which takes us to our next woman as we move from month to month. Takes us to Kim Smith, who disappeared sometime in January of 2009. You heard from Donald Smith, that was the gentleman in the wheelchair, about his daughter. Kim, I believe the testimony was really the only one of the 11 women who died that did not have any children or had not ever given birth to any children in her life. She would be the only one, but like the others, developed a crack cocaine problem. According to Mr. Smith, shortly after graduating from high school, Ms. Smith was about 44 years of age when she went missing. So again, a lifetime of struggling and battling with the perils of drug addiction. She would, her drug addiction would land her being charged with drug offenses, periods of incarceration, was staying with them in 2008. And he came in and he testified, the last time I saw her was January 17th of 2009. Her birthday would be January 20th. My sister, Christine, took her out on the 17th for shopping at a nearby mall to buy her some birthday clothes, and came back, and that was the last time he saw her. That was January 17th of 2009, and that's the last time she would be seen or heard from by anybody.
Can you tell me exactly what did you feel with your hand?
I can. That's why I could tell you it wasn't no weapon. I don't know. I think I just
Choked him.
nothing like beating on.
Yeah.
No.
Imelda Amy Hunter, 47, was a beautician and mother of 3. She disappeared in April 2009. Her family didn't report her missing until after the discovery of bodies at Sowell's home. Her remains were among those found, ending the uncertainty surrounding her disappearance.
Moving on, ladies and gentlemen, we come up to another lady by the name of Imelda Hunter. Period of April of 2009, a very, very active period of time for Mr. Sowell. Very active here in April of 2009. You heard from Denise Hunter, the sister to Imelda, and from Bobby Dancy Sr., the man who fathered 2 sons by her. Denise said that her sister Imelda was about 46 years of age at the time of her death. One time the family lived in Chicago, Illinois. At 20 years earlier, she met Bobby Dancy. She was a mother of 4, gave a birth of 2 sons to Mr. Dancy. Around the age of 25, she became addicted to crack cocaine. Last talked to her about what? Around April 19th of 2009. April 19th of 2009. She said that Imelda one time lived on Imperial way back in 2007. She was with her sister Imelda when they were walking on Imperial, went to Sowell's house. She knew her sister was going into the house to buy some drugs. It was not unusual for Imelda to disappear for a week at a time. But the bottom, long and short of it, is last seen sometime in the middle of April of 2009. Last seen or heard from.
All I can say is under 10. That's all I.
So,
hold up. Let me see.
If you were in my shoes, what would you want me to tell you? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6.
To put oneself inside the mind of the offender. And so when one does that, one sees that he had to have had the ability to interact interpersonally, speak with ease, set at ease the individuals, and in some way get them to come into his house with them. That in itself takes some amount of interpersonal skill, cognitive functioning, and mental wherewithal. Then, once he's been able to get them to come into his house with them, at some point, he flips the switch and then has to take measures to bind and restrain them. This isn't something that can be done haphazardly. One has to know where the binding is, has to have it readily available, has to use it in the appropriate fashion, make sure it's tight and so that the person can't get out of it. Binding and restraining in various ways, either their wrists or their ankles, and sometimes a gag around the mouth. After that's accomplished, then at some point there is the raping and the choking. Now, the autopsy reports showed that virtually all of the victims were either ligature strangled or choked. And in many of the cases, the victims were found still with the ligature around their neck and with bindings, which suggests strongly to me that these bindings were done post-mortem, that is, before the person was dead. Otherwise, why would you bind a dead victim?
Nancy was a mother who'd experienced hardship and cycles of addiction, yet carried a quiet strength and hope of reconnection with her children. According to those who knew her, she dreamed of rebuilding a stable life for her family beyond the shadows of her past.
And I indicated that around April 20th, a friend of hers was a person by the name of Nancy Cobbs. Once again, on behalf of Nancy Cobbs, you heard from two of her daughters, Kiana Hunt and Audrey Williams. No question, Nancy struggled with a drug problem for many years. Drug, to wit, crack cocaine. Mom would be living on the west side, but would come on a regular basis to the Griffin Kinsman area because that's her stomping ground for the people she knew where to get the drugs from. Said her mom's birthday was April 20th and saw her mom about 2 days prior to April 20th. The Friday after her birthday, apparently her mom had a doctor's appointment that she never made or showed up to. And Miss Hunt would make a police report the following Monday. Audrey Williams, daughter of Nancy Cobbs, testified she last saw her mom on April 24th, a few days after her birthday. Saw her in the area of where she was living at the time in the CMHA housing projects around 40th Street. And claims that her mom was staying with her at the time. April 24th, 2009, last time anybody heard or saw from Nancy Cobbs.
It takes some purposeful, deliberate action to control them. Okay? Then there's the raping, and then after the death, at some point, one has to wrap the bodies and conceal them in plastic. But where is the plastic going to come from? It needs to be readily available. It needs to be bought, purchased, moved, stored, used in the appropriate way, wrapped up. After it's wrapped up, then it's still not good enough. It needs to be duct taped to make sure that it's a tight package for easy disposal. All of this requires intact attention, concentration, memory, ability to plan, ability to organize. Otherwise, these are complex actions over a period of time. Otherwise, it simply wouldn't happen. Then there were other actions suggesting carrying loads of dirt up to conceal bodies, either in the crawl space or in the basement. This again takes effortful planning, memory, concentration, deliberation. Then, skipping ahead forward, at some point, graves had to be dug in the backyard. This will take planning, concentration, deliberation. My guess is that we'll never know at what point, whether it was daytime or nighttime, that the graves were dug. But regardless, the graves were dug. But then the bodies that were wrapped in plastic and had duct tape around them, at some point, those had to be transported out of the house and into the graves. Highly unlikely, I admit that I don't know, but highly unlikely that this was done in broad daylight. Highly unlikely that this was done in broad daylight. Why? Because he would be spotted. So more than likely this was done under the cover of darkness. Remember that when Ms. Morris escaped, this was in broad daylight and was spotted on the ground. There were readily many people there to spot and see her. So this would have had to have been done most likely under the cover of night.
Objection.
The body.
I think you're going a little bit too far.
Janice was described as caring and worn from life's burdens. Neighbors recall her involvement in local ministries and her belief in community healing.
Janice Webb, you heard from Lamar Webb, her son, her sisters, Joanne Moore, and Audrey Webb. On drugs for many, many years of her life. Lamar Webb said he last saw his mother in June of 2009. Said his mom was living in Lakewood. Don't forget that. Lakewood. Talk more about that later, but Lakewood. And in June of 2009, everybody just stopped hearing from her. Sisters said we would talk to her almost every day on the phone. That stopped. So once again, sometime in the summer or June of 2009, no more Janice Webb. You not consider whether Mr. Sowell had any motives for the 11 aggravated murders and 3 attempted murders that did not flow from a mental disease or defect such as hatred or intense anger toward women or something like sexual sadism. How can you not consider that? Overruled.
Not only would I consider it, but I would rule it out. First of all, the reason is because I was not asked to render an opinion as to right or wrong. And those issues would have been relevant to insanity, which was not claimed. Those issues in terms of malingering as well would have been relevant to, did the psychosis that he claimed have any impact on his behavior, which as it relates to the victims. He never said that. Mr. Sowell never said that the psychosis that he was suffering from had any impact on his behavior toward the victims. The most he said was that it kept him out of the room. He never said that the voices told him to strangle someone. He never said that the voices told him to do anything with the bodies. He said the voices would comment on things, would say things like, "You're going to be fine," or "It's going to be okay." But in fact, they never had anything to do with the direct relationship to the crime. So what you're talking about are really guilt-based issues. I was not asked to respond about guilt-based issues. And so the whole point about not taking it into consideration, I took it into consideration and I weighed it out.
But Dr. Woods, your total involvement in this case, you can't look at it with blinders on. I mean, there's no indication in this case, based on everything you've known, that Mr. Sowell did not know the difference between right and wrong. You don't have a problem with that, do you?
Absolutely, that's absolutely correct, and that was my finding as well, that he did. So,
because that's one of the things we're going to talk about what you were referred to do.
Okay.
All right.
In Cleveland today, FBI agents again dug through the backyard of suspected serial killer Anthony Sowell. So far, the remains of 11 women have been found inside and outside his home.
Talisha was a young mother whose family had waited late to report her missing. Only after bodies appeared in Sowell's house did the alarm sound. Talisha's life was marked by her love for her children, but also a struggle with circumstances she couldn't fully control.
Which takes us now to the next lady by the name of Talisha Forston. Miss Forston had been adopted by a lady by the name of Inez Forston. Inez lived in East Cleveland for several decades. Talisha, mother of three, about 31 years of age when she went missing. Long time problem with drugs, no question about it. Father of two girls by her is a gentleman by the name of Terrence Minor, who testified that he lived in the area, and she would come by occasionally and see her daughters. Another person struggling with a crack cocaine addiction. Inez testified that last time she saw her daughter was June 3rd, 2009, at her house in East Cleveland. She would disappear. Nobody would hear from her.
You had a body that was right here. You had a body that was over here. You had a bag that was a body in there. Oh my God. Hold on, look, I ain't finished. And you got a body behind the wall. Okay.
With a lot of dirt back there, too.
A lot of dirt all over that body.
Let's talk about some behavior evidence from the time of the offense. Okay?
Sure.
Now, whether or not such evidence that I'm going to list to you is evidence of impaired or unimpaired cognitive function. Okay?
Okay.
One, the fact that he wrapped the bodies of the victims in plastic and duct tape.
Yes.
Two, carried loads of dirt up to his third floor crawl space and down to the basement.
Yes.
Three, he dug graves for 5 victims in his backyard without being spotted. Okay. 4, he transported the concealed bodies to the graves and buried them without being spotted. And he took other steps to prevent discovery of these bodies, such as blocking windows, vents, and doors. Okay?
Yes.
This behavior, is that indicative of cognitive impairment or lack of cognitive impairment?
It's really not indicative of either one. I mean, it's really not indicative of either one.
Why do you say that?
Because, first of all, what we're looking at is behavior that one could do if they were cognitively impaired or not.
This behavior that I just described, do you see any signs of obsessive compulsive disorder there?
I did not examine the wrapping of the bodies, nor did I examine the quality of the digging of the graves. So I really couldn't say.
Diane had been engaged in rebuilding her life and sought stability. After years of hardship, she had shared dreams of getting clean, finding true love, and finding peace.
Next person is Diane Turner. To learn a little bit about Diane Turner, you heard from a lady by the name of Jasnith Groves, who is the foster parent to Diane Turner's daughter, Denise Martin, ever since Denise was a few weeks old. You heard from the father of Denise Martin, James Martin. And again, a long-time drug addiction problem. Miss Groves indicated that she worked at Daly's. Jasmine Groves worked at Daly's, a Jamaican restaurant in the area of 116th and Buckeye, I believe, for many years, and would get, every night she would almost see Diane Turner come up to Daly's and maybe wash dishes for a half hour to an hour and get paid for that. But that stopped toward the end of August or the beginning of September of 2009. But again, we have a woman that worked at a Jamaican restaurant. We would learn more about that when Mr. Sowell was interrogated at a later point in time. But once again, ladies and gentlemen, a woman that was last seen at the end of August or beginning of September of 2009 and just would disappear.
You got 4 bodies up top. You got 1 body in the basement. There's no more room in the house for bodies. So you gotta go outside. This would make her most likely the last one.
Anthony Sowell, a convicted sex offender and former Marine, was arrested the day after the bodies were found. He showed no remorse. In 2011, he was convicted on 82 counts, including murder, rape, and abuse of corpses. Sentenced to death, he lived nearly a decade longer, dying of illness in prison in 2021. But the scars he left behind, on families, on women ignored, on a city that failed to protect its most vulnerable, remain. This was not just a serial killer. This was a systemic silence, and these women deserved to be heard.
Cleveland serial killer Anthony Sowell has died. The Ohio Department of Correction told us he entered the end-of-life care unit January 21st for a terminal illness not related to COVID-19, they say. He died yesterday. In 2011, a judge sentenced him to death for killing 11 women. Investigators found their bodies at his home on Imperial Avenue in 2009.